Hey, everybody, and welcome once again to the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. I'm your host, Gene Jackson, and joining me this week is one half of the untouchable podcast duo from P3 Radio. It's Josh Briley. Welcome, Josh. How goes it this week?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
I feel like a piece of me is missing, dude. Like, I don't know what to do.
We've never done this before.
I'm sitting on my hands right now so they don't just rise up.
Well, that's not the only reason. I figure, well, to let you know, don't sit on your hands too long. Miss Simpson's not here this week, so no need to pull the old stranger. But, we mentioned last week your tag team partner, Richard, was going to be unavailable this week. And originally, we thought this episode would be the first where you and I go it alone covering a USWA episode. However, much like when Jeff Jarrett jumped up on the apron and joined those jobbers here a few weeks ago, someone has jumped up on the ring apron and offered to tag in. So, folks, welcome back to the show. This week's special guest co-host from stspod.club and the foremost spokesman of Spunk Lube everywhere, the one and only Coach BT himself, Mr. Brian Tramel. Brian, how you doing this morning?
Tag me in, brother. Tag me in. I'm ready to go. Hey, I got a Memphis Wrestling WCW Tag Me In story. Do y'all want to hear it real quick?
No.
So Buddy Landell says he's taking care of business with this girl in a hotel, and Bobby Eaton is his roommate. Bobby walks through the door, and Buddy yells, Tag me, come on, tag me, Bobby, you can get some. And Bobby just turns around. And Buddy told us that story. He said, Bobby said, fuck this shit, and just turned around and left. So there you go. Buddy Landell, Bobby Eaton story right off the bat.
Can you imagine all the opportunities Bobby could have had tagging in with Stan Lane?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Bobby was drink a few beers, go to the hotel and sleep. That's what the kind of guy he was. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that. If you'd have told me mild-mannered Bobby Eaton was out there and running trains with people, I would be so.
But Buddy Landell was another situation. So,
well, yeah, you can't call yourself the nature boy and not pull those types of shenanigans. I mean, come on. So I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. Josh asked me how I was doing. Of course, I say fine because that's just what you say to people when you're not an asshole and don't want to list 20 ailments for 10 minutes like people do these days. You go through the line of the store and like, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Oh, my feet hurt. My gout's acting up. I got the runs. But anyway, I do have some kind of bronchitis going on. So if I have to mute myself quite frequently and cough, you guys can just fill in the gaps.
And I know Josh hasn't said anything, but I did find out why Richard couldn't be here today. I did find it. I mean, this is something that I've suffered my whole life, and Gene's had problems with it before too. Guys, Richard's got fatitis today. So, fatitis is a bad thing. It really is.
Boy, you better be glad Richard doesn't watch this show, or he'd be coming for you next week.
That boy's he's really big.
I'm not sure. I was trying to do grandma, but that was not her, was it? All
man.
right, go ahead.
Let's
go. He specifically said, do not let you do that impression.
That was his only caveat to laying out.
You've already fucked that up. Right here at the front, too.
My bad.
You'll be super happy.
My bad,
you're going to get heat with the audience, too. I mean, that grandma is beloved on this show, and you go trampling on grandma doing a poor impression. It's going to be a bad day for all of us.
All right. I'll be quiet.
All right, guys, let's head back to June 14th, 1993 for another episode of USWA Championship Wrestling. The show kicks off with Dave and Corey letting us know we'll be seeing Brian Christopher, Mark Freer, The Natural, Bo Alexander, Principal C.W. Bergstrom, and our feature match today, which we are going to be calling in watch-along form. I haven't sprung that on you guys yet.
Oh, wow.
But it's not a long one. The USWA Tag Team Champions Simply Divine, Rex King and Steve Dahl with Burt Prentice taking on Jerry the King Lawler and, of course, Mr. Jeff Jarrett. Plus, Dave mentions we're still trying to get Brian to sign this contract to defend his Southern Heavyweight title against Jeff Jarrett. So we'll have to see how that goes this week, if he manages to get that contract signed, because it seems to be more important to Dave than perhaps anybody for some reason. I don't
That's
know
the way it's coming off, dude. I like that's the feeling I got. I'm like, okay, it was weird last week that he was so assertive about it, and this week he's still like he's he's well, I don't want to insult anybody's religion, but just use your imagination. He's very persistent in the sign the contract.
It's as if Pro Shingle told him that he had to get this done today. We needed to wrap this up today.
Are you trying to say it was the Aunt Your Mama witness? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I don't know about that, but you know what I'm saying.
All right.
So, what better way to start a show out, guys? If you want to start a show out hot, you really want to lock those fans in, make sure they don't tune out. How are you going to start the show? You're going to bring out Principal C.W. Bergstrom to do both a promo and a match. He doesn't have Mike Samples with him this week, so that's different. But we learned that his feud with Jeff Gaylord is apparently far from over, so that's wonderful. So let's sample a little bit of this promo and COCW in action in the ring.
Let me get three things straight here. When I'm out here, I want your respect, I want your attention, and I want complete silence. No different than any other classroom. I'll tell you what, Jeff Gaylord, you've been whining and crying. You want another match with me? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm getting real tired of beating you up. So I'll tell you, I'll give you another match, but one stipulation, the loser gets to take 5 licks from the Board of Education.
He's not against Gaylord now. He's against the Scorpion in there. Bergstrom, big forearm across the back. We're underway with USWA action. Corey?
Yes, sir. C.W. Bergstrom coming for the Board of Education in Oregon, and the Scorpion is his opponent at D.D. Still, the official referee for this bout today. And down, the principal, C.W. Bergstrom, making a lot of noise in the USWA. Picked up the Scorpion, and a big power slam cover. 1, 2, 3, and Bergstrom gets the win.
Still want to get this contract signed for Brian Christopher. If you were watching last week, you know what I'm talking about. Christopher refusing to sign it. Oh, what is this? Referee being chased out of the ring there.
Oh, boy. That's just ridiculous. Look at C.W. Bergstrom paddling the Scorpion in there.
Some help.
Yeah.
Jeff Gaylord.
And Gaylord goes after Bergstrom, trying to get the paddle from him. He's pulling and finally clobbers Bergstrom. He's got it. There goes C.W. Bergstrom out of there, too.
Bergstrom got out of there just in time, and there he goes, and there is Jeff Gaylord.
So Gaylord in true Gaylord form smacks the top rope with a paddle. It damn near comes back and knocks him out.
And that was not me, the Black Scorpion. I just want y'all to know, if I was in tights and a mask at that time in my life, that's exactly what I would have looked like. So there you go.
It would have been BT Express 2 on Memphis.
Yeah, Black Scorpion 2. There we go.
So
do we really know was that like Don Bass or something?
No, I don't think so. No, I'm not sure who that was. Yeah.
That guy turns up from time to time, but he's some outlaw guy.
Oh, okay. I never really knew.
We'll give Don Bass a little more credit than that. So Bergstrom gets the win with I ain't gonna say well executed power slam, but with a somewhat executed power slam, and the Scorpion gets a few licks from the paddle, as they refer to it.
Licks.
The Board of Education, as it's now called.
Very stiff licks.
That prompts Jeff Gaylord to run it. So we're almost, so once again, we got these formulas that we follow here, and it's always Bergstrom wins a match. He goes to initially strap people with a strap. We pivot to the Board of Education, and that prompts Jeff Gaylord to run in, run him off. If Samples was there, he usually takes a few licks from the paddle, but he wasn't there. So nobody got the paddle except for Jeff. Nearly got it right between his eyes when he smacked the top rope with it. If that would have popped back and hit him in the head and juiced him, it would have made this whole show for me. But unfortunately, we didn't get that. But since this is BT's first episode, he's done one episode before, but he hasn't been here in 2 or 3 months. I feel it only appropriate that we break BTN with his first Jeff Gaylord promo clip. Let's hear from Jeffrey.
Comment or two from him. Looks like you ended up with the upper hand.
Let me tell you, Dave Brown, 5 licks coming up in this match with me and C.W. Bergstrom, baby. I've been at the batting cages practicing. I'm just not going to paddle your bottom. I'm going to give you some home run swat. That's going to be blistered so bad, you won't be able to stand up for a month. I guarantee it.
Jeff Gaylord, that match is coming up. We got a match coming up right here, and that'll happen in just a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
Okay, so the saying is we paddle you so hard so you won't be able to sit down for a month, not stand up. Sit down for a month because it's your ass.
The simplest of lines, and Jeff Gaylord can't pull it off.
Yeah, just horrible, just horrible.
So how are you guys digging this C.W. Bergstrom Jeff Gaylord feud so far?
It's awesome. 5 stars.
I'm gonna be honest with you. It's something that I've like grown to look forward to. Because honestly, dude, like I believe that C.W. Bergstrom, he's jacked. You know what I mean? I think I've seen maybe pictures of him from Portland or something. Like he had a decent look. I feel like he has potential. And then you're talking about maybe it may have been something starting up in WWF. They'll see how it worked or whatever. So like I'm on the train with him, but man, Jeff Gaylord makes it difficult. And let's not be, let's not screw around. Like he's not the greatest wrestler. I just like the whole paddle thing, and it's really entertaining in a funny way.
I like the gimmick. It changes a little bit down the line. I'm not going to do no spoilers here. I think Gene actually made reference to it, and I really like the other version more than what they're doing right here. But you can see this in WWE just so clear. It would have been a hell of a WWE gimmick. So.
Oh, yeah, in much the same way that they used Dean Douglas, which didn't get very much traction either because he ended up leaving. But, yeah, I see the potential for it. And like you said, BT, they tweaked it as we go along because he's finding his way because, let's face it, there had never been a high school principal wrestling gimmick before. And I think we'll eventually see why. But I don't know. I give you guys more credit than me. I started out mildly disliking it, and by now seeing it this many weeks, I fucking loathe it and dread it every week.
All right,
we'll let you guys continue to enjoy it. So we take a commercial break, and when we return, we once again see highlights of the Papa Shango match defeating Jerry Lawler for the Unified World Title a few weeks back. Then the King is out to talk about the call-in contest they're going to be having. To find 15 kids to go out to dinner and see the movie with him and Jeff Jarrett and with Michael J. Fox. And then he lets us know that we're getting a rematch this Monday night between he and Papa Shango finally after they did that tournament, then immediately had to pivot away from it because he had to be at Monday Night Raw. And he lets us know that he's going to roast Bertha, a.k.a. Bert Prentice, like a pig. And then we get a few standard Lawler lines. It's going to be like Memphis and May and all this shit he's said about, Nelson Knight and everybody ad nauseum for weeks now. So, I don't know. I mean, it's your typical weekly Jerry Lawler promo, and I'm a big Jerry Lawler fan. I don't normally dump on Lawler or his promos, but man, this has felt super repetitious. Am I alone in this?
No,
I was disappointed. Oh, sorry, BT. You go.
No, you are 100% right, y'all. I've never noticed this until y'all started doing the show. He comes out 2 or 3 times and he gets more excited about the baseball stuff than he does or the weather. Did y'all notice the great dye job that Lawler had on here? He had a brand new dye job. It was completely black. And he also said Monday night be there. So he stole that from me in the future. I just want y'all to know that. So.
Yeah, I was kind of taken back by like the contest changed. It was the first 15 callers, adults can come, but we're trying to get kids. He specifically said that. And the show before was you and 10 of your friends. And now it's just the first 15 kids that call. So I remember this being a kid, and it was really confusing. Like I said last show, I was just, oh my God, I don't have 10 friends. That's not going to work. But now I felt like I had a chance.
I think maybe somebody after they went off camera come back here like, Lawler, how many kids you know that even have 15 friends, much less ones they can get together to go hang out with you and Jeff Jarrett. Let's tweak this a little bit. But he doubles down on the being kids thing later. We'll keep that in mind. We'll circle back to that later. We got a little clip for that. But next up, Brian Christopher's out sadly with no Miss Simpson this week, and Dave Brown immediately starts sweating him about signing this damn contract. Let's check a little bit of this out, and let's see. I got a lot to say after this. I'm sure you guys will as well, but let's check out this Brian segment.
So you can stop coming out here all morning long. We got a contract need to be signed, because I'm not signing it, Dave. I'm not ever going to sign the contract against Sissy Boy Jeff Jarrett, okay?
All right, I know who your opponent is if you're not going to sign the contract, and you've said no. Take a look at your opponent right here. Watch this right here. Here's your opponent.
Where?
Right there is your opponent.
Now, who is this, Dave? Hey, I'll tell you what. I ain't wrestling him either. No way. There ain't no way I'm wrestling that big tooth. No way. I ain't scared of him, but I ain't wrestling him. I ain't wrestling Jeff Jarrett, and I'm not wrestling that big monster. No way.
To sign the contract.
It's a setup. It's a big conspiracy. You see what I'm saying? I ain't putting my belt up against you. No way.
Well, you don't have to. All you got to do is sign the contract. I'm telling you.
Well, I ain't wrestling him.
Well,
If somebody give me a pen.
Right.
Give me a pen.
Corey, you got a pen?
Yeah, here. Here's this.
And there's Jeff. Boy, he's got to be loving this. He's been trying to get this name on this contract for so long, I can't tell you. Go ahead and sign it.
I'll tell you what. I tell you what. Hey.
He signed it. Brian Christopher, he signed it.
Yeah, he signed it. Oh, hey, I signed it, didn't I? Hey, well, I ain't wrestling you either. There ain't no way I'm wrestling you, Jeff Jarrett.
So we lost Josh. I figure he'll be back here in a moment. Probably had some technical difficulties, but so you remember Brian last week when Brian Christopher refuses to sign the contract. Their ace up their sleeve was, you're going to have to wrestle the WWF superstar, The Undertaker.
Right.
Now here we are 1 week later. If you don't sign the contract, you got to wrestle this guy. And it's just some random dude in a mask we've never seen before. And Brian is almost selling it bigger than he did about having to wrestle The Undertaker. But man, you talking about like taking 10 steps down from what you did last week. I don't know that I'd even went this route, because this feels so underwhelming compared to having The Undertaker last week. What do you think about this?
It's the thing about it, we didn't see a thing about The Undertaker, which surprised me. We haven't seen any clips from that. That disappointed me. This guy, and if I'm wrong, please let me know. I know there's a bunch of people that watch USWA that know the people under the mask a little bit better than me sometimes. But I believe he called himself, there's a couple of guys that called himself this, but he called himself the Atomic Dog. His name was Simon Langston. There was Atomic Dog Ali Stevens also, but this was Simon Langston. And this is the promotion, the outlaw promotion that Brian started wrestling under a mask. Him and who was his partner? Kid Wicked.
Yeah, Tony Williams.
They were wrestling at this outlaw promotion, and it was Simon Langston's promotion. I think Rough and Ready wrestled there also. But I think that's who this is, and I think the other big guy that we'll hear from here in a few minutes, with the purple mask on, the Purple Demon, I think he's also from that promotion. That
makes a lot of sense. Okay. I worked some shows like in Corinth with that Atomic Dog. Well, both Atomic Dogs actually passed there at different times, but I know exactly who you're talking about. And I don't know. That seems
I
logical.
think that's who it is. And also, Brian says something. And if you have never been inside the business, in the dressing rooms and stuff, you don't really understand what he's saying. But he always calls people goose. That is a no-no. You don't call, unless they are goose, you don't call anyone in the business a goof. And he always tries to do that at least once during the interview, which I find hilarious that he's doing that. But I'm pretty sure that was Simon, and he just a huge, big guy that, just does power moves.
It's funny you mentioned that because, there was another, I guess it was considered somewhat of an inside term, but it was kind of like goofs where guys would call people this in the dressing room. And it really wasn't known until The Rock brought, but calling people a jabroni was a big knock in the dressing room for guys, just that goof. And people didn't say it in front of the camera until The Rock started saying it. And then all of a sudden it just became part of the everyday vernacular. But
I know I had to smarten up my co-host Lance. He had called somebody a goof. And I was like, you can call him a goober, but don't call him a goof. To me, it's just offensive. I've heard it, a lot of times from people. Who is that guy? He's just a goof. And I've heard him talk about Lawler always has a goof with him. And I mean, think of all the guys that he brought into the business. So, but yeah, I think that's who that is. If I'm wrong, please someone let me know.
That would make a lot of sense. Now it's funny because I'll get messages and it'll be, anything from, really strong guesses or facts to, people like, no, man, that was Ron Simmons. I'm like, hey, that was not Ron Simmons. Like, what are you talking about? But, so I have to kind of sift through the responses, and you can't take them all at face value because some people just grasp at straws. And
I think they wrestled in West Memphis in some of those little areas like that. I may be wrong on that too, but I remember seeing the results. What was the magazine that wasn't one of the? Was it Wrestling Review? Was that what it was called? It was on it was on the gimmick tables, and you could buy it at the matches. And then they had results from all over the place in the local. They had like 4 different versions of it. And those they sent in results. Simon's little promotion did.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. There's Josh.
There's Josh's back.
Man, sorry guys. My internet or some shit crapped out. I don't know. I just had to turn my computer like twice.
It's all good.
Time
BT called you a goof, and
I did not.
I mean, to be fair, this is like a school issued Chromebook. I don't have any kids in school anymore, so.
So we hadn't moved away from it yet. We watched the promo with Brian refusing to sign the contract, and we were talking about the fact that Brian kind of sold having to wrestle this random guy in a mask more so than he sold having to wrestle the Undertaker.
Yes.
And BT had brought up, and I agree, it was disappointing that we saw no clips of the Undertaker match. We don't even acknowledge it happened. It's just like it just went away. What was your take on this segment here with Brian and the contract signing of the week?
Well, like I said, I remember this show as a kid and being confused about how they changed the rules and stuff. But, you hear me like talk fondly about 1991 and how important it was. I'm sure we've talked like in the group message and stuff about it before too. Yeah. But it's also a time where I was really crushed by Memphis wrestling because that was a time where Lawler versus Leatherface was the big deal. It was around my birthday and all that. And they had the final match to where it was either, I forget the stipulation totally, but it was Leatherface gets beat, he gets unmasked. And I knew Lawler was going to beat him. And I even had dreams on Friday night going into Saturday morning about Lawler beating him and what happened and all that. They get on there, they barely talk about it, and when they do, no unmasking, he just sets him on fire. I was so crushed, man. I didn't watch wrestling for a month or two, and this is like the same deal. I was really excited because I was watching wrestling again. And I was, oh my God, Brian Christopher versus The Undertaker. I was so excited. And I'm watching, and like you said, nothing. They don't mention it. They act like it never happened. And then I mean, the guy was muscular, but who the fuck is he? I don't know who he is. And Brian, like you're talking about, Brian acted like he was scared to death of him.
Yeah.
And it's very disrespectful for, you bring the Undertaker. It needed to happen in reverse. Bring that guy out.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we'll do the Undertaker this week. That way you never know who Contract Incorporated is going to be. It could be anybody. That would have been great.
And I know that the Undertaker thing fell in their lap last week and they had to kind of put that together in a couple of days' time. But maybe you just don't approach this way then, because it's so less than what you did the week before. I don't know how anybody at the time.
It's easy. That's the problem, where all this looks so easy for them that they could care less about the booking, in that they're we've talked about this before, but they're booking toward one show. It seems like there's no booking for everything else. They book for Monday night, and the other house shows, but we don't get any, continuous. Every once in a while we get, the feud that keeps on going and going, Lawler. But this was easy. They just said, go out there and do exactly what you did last week.
Well, we talked about this last week, Brian. I kind of like to hear your input on it before we keep this moving. But this whole premise is so flimsy to start with, because the premise is we can't force Brian to defend the Southern Heavyweight title against Jeff Jarrett without him agreeing to sign a contract. But yet we can pull in any random opponent you've never seen, The Undertaker, some black dude in a mask, and we can make him defend the title against him. We can do that at will, but we cannot make him wrestle Jeff Jarrett.
All right, do you want to explain this?
Please do.
The psychology is that he has – this is what they're thinking. And they don't explain it to the fans, but the thing is that he has to defend the belt, because you have 30 days. That's the gimmick. You have 30 days. He's got to defend the belt. Well, he won't sign. He won't get it against Jeff Jarrett. So if he won't do it, we can force him to go against anyone. That's what they're wanting
last
you to
week.
believe.
It ain't been 30 fucking days.
They just want you to believe that. That's it. They can force him to go against somebody if he don't sign that stupid contract, which, just killed the whole gimmick.
Why can they not force him to wrestle Jeff Jarrett?
Yep. Tore it up.
Why is Jeff Jarrett special?
Well, he is special, by the way. I just want y'all to know that.
Well, I know you have a special place for him in your heart, but
that's right.
But I mean, that's the part nobody explained to me, because you can't. There's no logical reason why they can force him to wrestle anybody on earth but Jeff Jarrett. That's stupid. I mean, I get it. It's wrestling. That's the kind of dumb shit wrestling was built on. But I don't know. I've always been way too logical, even when I was a little kid. That's why I didn't like fantasy sci-fi movies and none of that kind of shit, because I couldn't turn my head off to it. And I didn't like horror movies because that would never happen. And I was the same way about wrestling. So, yeah, I spent a lot of time picking it apart. Anyway, match number 2, Brian Christopher takes on Clyde Coleman. And this is just your typical jobber squash here. With a guy who, put him on a couple of cycles and put him in the gym for a while. He could easily be Contract Incorporated, right? And, you missed BT's guest, Josh, while you were away. He thinks that's Too Cold Scorpio under the mask there.
Yeah, so, that's what I think it is.
We'll see if he ends up that he's right on that.
I'll go Butch Reed.
I think he's wrong.
I think he's a little darker than Butch Reed, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to get into those kinds of conversations.
He could have been like chilling in Pensacola or something. Got a tan.
Well, that's true. He might have went down there for Ron Fuller for a few weeks.
Yeah.
But anyway, Brian does land another exceptional Tennessee jam to put this one away. We've commented in the past on, Brian was probably number 2 right behind Bobby Eaton on that top rope leg drop. And this one was no exception.
And he could do it with either leg.
Exactly.
Later on,
so good.
He got to doing it with the left. And I remember having specific conversations. Like I would go visit my uncle and, just get to screw around with, in the ring and stuff for a month or whatever. And he would see me doing left leg drops. And he would, you need to do it with the right, do it with the right. Look like a goof doing it the other leg and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, it doesn't feel right doing it with that one. And I was like, Brian Christopher does it. And he was like, well, you don't need to do it.
You're like, but Uncle Danny, I can go both ways. And he's like, son, don't ever tell anybody.
Well, you'll go far in the big promotion.
You'll get a push, but you won't like where they're pushing it. But anyway.
Or you might. You never know.
Or maybe you will.
I hope you don't.
But either way, I'll still love you, nephew. So we take another break. Then Dave lets us know that they'll be giving us a special number to call a little later for the kids to win this dinner and a movie with Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler. We're really pushing that this week. Then they run down the card for Monday night, which we'll do that here later. We don't do it this early in the show like they do. And after that, we see highlights of last week's tag team match where Simply Divine defended against Jeff Jarrett and Moondog Spot, where they use chairs and weapons and God knows what all through the entire match, but the match still ends up ending in a DQ because Spot hit referee Paul Neighbors. Like I said on the show last week, I couldn't give less of a fuck about that match, and I still don't. I definitely didn't put a clip of it because what's the point in seeing all that just for it to end in a freaking DQ so that now we can turn around and promote doing it again with no DQ.
Like, but this is no DQ.
No DQ.
Come on. Yeah.
Well, the Moondog match is no DQ.
That's
the
right.
Ref doesn't get involved. That's the understanding. So if he hits the ref, like it's expected. That was total BS.
And so I think Moondog Spot had fattitis at this time too. If y'all could,
he was getting there. He damn sure was getting there. But again, it's just one of those things where when you slap logic in the face as hard as they do here in Memphis a lot over the years, it's really hard for me to accept. But again, if you're going to watch it, you got to kind of accept it. So Jeff Jarrett comes out and cuts his weekly promo now. He talks about the movie with Michael J. Fox and that him and Jerry Lawler were going to be in a battle over who wins the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, which was funny. And then he promotes the fact that, we're basically getting the same freaking match this Monday night that we had last week, except this time there's no time limit and allegedly no disqualification. So, who cares? I'm sorry. I try not to be too dismissive on here, but this whole segment here, you could have just skipped it altogether. So, match number 3, we see this new guy that we saw last week for the first time, the Natural, Bo Alexander, taking on Jason Walker. Now, I didn't get a clip of this match. Now I'm kind of wishing I did because BT says he has a little inside info straight from Mr. Jason Walker. So,
yeah, did you first of all, did you find out anything about Bo Alexander? I don't remember this guy at all.
I went through all my usual methods of checking up on people. I couldn't find anything online. The people I reached out to, they were like, no, man, he just popped up for a little bit and then he was gone. Don't know where he came from. Don't know where he went. I'm like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, he did. Y'all said Chick Donovan. That's who he looked like. Then it's kind of the Fabs gimmick. Just plain. He reminded me of like one of those Creed wrestlers, where you just have this plain guy. I talked to Jason Walker. The name was real familiar, and I remember that I was friends with him on Facebook. He was at some of the shows when I did WrestlingRightOnline.com. He said he flew in that day from California and thought he was meeting with Jerry Jarrett, but Jarrett wasn't there. And Eddie Marlin was in charge. So Eddie Marlin was backstage during this because Jerry was out of town. He did the match, got good feedback from everyone, and he said that this got him some WWE shows where he went in and did what do they call advanced talent or where he did jobs on WWE TV, and he was JD Rage. He said he thinks this is the only match he ever wrestled under his shoot name. And he also said he recalled backstage that everyone knew that Brian Christopher was Lawler's kid, but no one wanted to say anything. It was like it was kayfabe backstage. He said Buddy Wayne was the only one that made comments about it. And it was like everybody was trying to kayfabe the boys, even though the boys knew it backstage. So there we go. That was fun to reach out to Jason this morning and kind of know what was going on back behind the stage.
What is your thoughts on Bo Alexander so far, BT? We kind of talked about
like I said, I have he's just plain Jane to me. It's just like he's got a nice body, I was going to add him to the Hog Report, but I couldn't get Richard to record this week, being sick and everything. We were going to do the Hog Report on him. Not very impressive.
Later, anyways.
Do what?
That's later in the show anyway.
Oh, okay. But I was not impressed. Just let me say that. And then just nothing to me. Just absolute. Not that he's just like god awful horrible. It's just like, it's just, who is the other guy that they made such a big deal about? The young guy. I think his name starts with I don't know what his name was, but it's just nothing. It really, it's like they're not trying, and I hate it. I mean, I talked about this the first time I came home. This was a period of time in Memphis wrestling that I had quit watching. I had sold all my videotapes. I was with my first kid, married, had one kid, had my own pizza restaurant. I was busy with real life and didn't watch it. And it's so much fun to listen to y'all talk about this and me watch it for the first time. Josh talk about the excitement that he got and all that. I love that kind of stuff, but I'm able to sit and watch it with y'all. But then I'm just sitting there going, am I going to last throughout the whole year? And I think the only thing that keeps me going is that you might say, hey, you want to do a show, and I want to be caught up on what's going on. But yeah, it's just
Right.
there's a lot of stuff there. It's like they don't care what they're doing.
Well, we're in a rough patch right now, no doubt. There's been a couple of times I've told Ray, I'm like, man, I wish we'd have started in 92. We decided to start in 93 because of the WWF tie-in, but I think 92 was a better year, honestly. But we're here, we're doing it. My takeaway from Bo Alexander was this: it's a statement to how hard up we were for talent. Because yes, I mean he's got a decent build and everything, but in the past and in the future, we've had guys who had a better build and seemed a little more talented that we used as jobbers. I mean, Charlie Laird would put this guy to shame, but he was always mostly used as a job guy. But if you take the bow tie and the sunglasses off this guy and just stand him in the ring when we come back from a break, you wouldn't think like, man, they should be pushing this guy. Just be like, all right, well, this enhancement guy's in a little better shape than most of them. So I don't know. We'll see how this plays out for him. But from that match, we go straight into a promo with Burt Prentice and Simply Divine. Burt humorously referred to Moondog Spot as Moondog Scrub. That was really the only thing that kind of stuck.
I thought the excitement here, Burt was so fired up like he was headed to the Rainbow Club or something that night. I mean, he was I was fast forwarding because I was not wanting to hear Burt yell again. But then I rewound and watched the whole promo. He was so excited about this match. So,
well, when you rewound and watched the promo, did you catch this little clip right here? To me was the most fun of the whole promo.
I know what you're fixing to say. Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to show it, then we'll see if we were thinking of the same thing.
We do best, and that's to keep titles, win titles.
Poor Burt gets smacked right in the top of the head with the belt.
I said he got hit with the belt. Yeah.
So if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not, check out that little clip. It's fun. Rex King goes to throw the belt over his shoulder and smacks poor Burt right in the face with it, which, I mean, all right, I won't even tell you. That would have been an easy joke, but we'll just blow right past that. So after that, we see a very, very, and I mean very brief clip of Miss Texas strapping Miss Simpson with a belt from last week.
All I could think is Josh would really like to be strapping Miss Simpson. That's what I thought when I saw that clip. So,
man, well, I'd take her. I'd get the Board of Education after her.
You'd have the Board of Education after.
Yeah, I was like 10, so yeah, it'd have been horrible.
But yeah, I think we're all a fan of Miss Simpson, except for Richard. He's not interested in such things, other than he'd like to know a little more about that Jennifer chick, but that's purely just for informational purposes. But we got a promo here, and again, this being BT's second time on the show, I feel like we need to let him partake in one of our favorite things, and of course, we always enjoy a good Miss Texas promo here on the show.
Miss Texas.
Hi, Miss Simpson. You are now in the USWA. And so for the past 3 weeks, you stuck your nose in my business. But all that gonna change now. Because I got a match against you where the loser gets 10 lashes. Now, Miss Simpson, you don't know me, but you better look around and you better ask somebody. Because Miss Texas is not gonna get beat by a cheap bimbo like you.
There's the word, short and sweet, from Miss Texas.
Yep.
I feel like Brian's promo last week ensured that she's never going to use the phrase, I'm going to beat you like I own you, because
Damn, he give
boy,
her
Brian
hell
fired
for
back
2
hard
weeks.
on that one.
Oh, man, he beat the hell out of her 2 weeks in a row. But Miss Texas, every time I hear Miss Texas promo, all I can think is country fried. That is all because that's the way. If we were in school and somebody went crazy like that and started talking like that, all the people in my school would say, "Man, that girl country pride. She acted crazy." But that's exactly what she is. She's country pride. So
It did seem like, though, it was a little more than, we got the joke going on. Let's just pull the string and see which phrase she's going to use.
oh yeah.
It did seem like this one was a little more wordy, and it was like, well, she's getting a little bit more comfortable out there just saying what she wants to say, opposed to just the, I'm all da-da-da, and then she walks away.
Well, I was hoping she would say she was going to whip Simpson's ass so hard that she wouldn't be able to stand, but no, that was Jeff
Gaylord beat her to
Gaylord.
that one.
That's his gimmick. So there we go.
It's funny because it's almost like if this was all happening in real time, that somebody was going back telling folks what we're saying on this show, because you see us criticize things and then suddenly it gets corrected or changed, and it's like, well, it was 93, so we know that's not the case. But if this was a real time thing, somebody would be going, somebody tells them what y'all say on that show, and then they go and change it. Just like when me and BT used to shit on Corey Macklin's Memphis Wrestling on, his website, and then, it would seemingly get addressed sometimes. But then we know for a fact that was getting watched.
That's what I was going to say. Corey was very upset with me backstage. So me and Gene were not, he didn't like me at all. I know Corey didn't. So.
Well, that was a terrible mistake to sell it, because once I realized, he does know what we're saying.
Yeah. I went right with it.
Figured that in. I'm like, all right, well, let's make notes and see what we won't change and see if we can't make it happen. So
I was getting spoilers as the shows was being taped. Like after the show was over, someone would call me with the spoilers, and he went into the dressing room and just chewed the whole roster out. Who is giving BT the spoilers? And he didn't know that he was 16 or 17 at the time. I think he's actually a wrestler now. He was in the crowd, watched the show, and then called. And he was so upset. He just kept on. Somebody in this dressing room is calling BT.
Y'all quit snoozing off the BT in there. He's telling it on their website, and I'm tired of BT's ass out there. Meanwhile, it's because a little kid out there calling. All the guys are getting their ass chewed.
Yep. They would tape 3 shows. I think, if I remember right, one was live and the other 2 were not live. So as soon as the live one finished and they taped the other one, I would put the results of that one up. I mean, as soon as it was done, the second show was up, and he was just like, "You can't do that. You can't put spoilers up." And then the boys would tell me, "Corey said you can't put spoilers up." I said, "What? What do you mean I can't put spoilers up?" Kind of thing, So yeah, he didn't
happen.
like
Once it happened, it's fair game. I mean,
yep.
And if Tony Schiavone can do it on Nitro, you can do it on a website. But so match number 4, Mark Freer versus the Purple Demon. Now, we've changed and this happens a lot in Memphis Wrestling, all the way back to 85. On 1985, in the course of an episode, you will see Steve Constance, or in another segment when they're telling the out of town shows, they'll say Steve Constant, and it'll change 2 or 3 times in the course of one show, with Dave Brown saying it every time. So we went from Mark Freer, F-E-E-R, to suddenly this week they're spelling it F-R-E-A-R. I don't know what's correct. I don't think
he's the Bo. He's like Bo Alexander to me. He's one. That's who I was trying to come up with their name a few moments ago. To me, it's just so generic. There's nothing there for that kid for me.
Well, that's my homeboy, so don't be knocking
I'm
him.
sorry,
but
my bad.
That's just a play on what we'll be seeing here in the coming weeks. That's a little thinly veiled spoiler, but. Mark Freer versus the Purple Demon. And if you're thinking this match sounds like a not so great match, then you're right on the money. Purple Demon is another guy we've never seen before, another muscular black guy in a mask, which BT kind of gave us a hint earlier of who this guy is. And I thought the same thing that Brian did, honestly. This guy's in the ring. I'm like, do they seriously have this Contract Incorporated guy here doing a job for Mark Freer when he's Brian Christopher's big scary opponent Monday? And as soon as I think that, watching this through the first time, here comes Brian Christopher on commentary. He says exactly what I'm thinking. Hey, guys, that's Contract Incorporated. But we proved to be wrong when they're both on camera at the same time while Purple Demon's in the ring. Contract Incorporated comes out. And if you're watching this on video here, there's a shot of Contract Incorporated. And looking at that, I feel like BT was correct in his guess of who that is. I don't know. We shall see how it plays out. And we've lost Josh again.
I think also when I was talking earlier that they just go out there and do the same thing. They did, because I don't think this guy, I mean, he didn't have his gear on, but I mean, all he did was wearing a white pair of shorts and just took his shirt off, and I think they put a mask on him because he's probably going to do a job Saturday. Monday night, and he doesn't want, because he does local stuff. He doesn't want to do that. So
yeah. So meanwhile, that's how that played out with Brian making the accusation about Purple Demon being Contract Incorporated. Meanwhile, in this match, Mark Freer botches the living shit out of this backwards crossbody off the second rope. So of course, in true USWA fashion, not only we not try to ignore it, we replay it in slow motion for the freaking commercial bumper.
Makes no sense.
I've never seen anybody do this as much as we see from the USWA. So it's time for our first podcast commercial break. So right now, let's take a look at the botched crossbody from Mark Freer here in slow motion, no less, as we take our commercial break.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school, but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
It's like it turned into him taking a fall away slam from this guy. I mean, that could have very well been that guy's finish if he wasn't jobbing.
He would have been okay, but he missed. He jumped over him. If he would have just slipped on his feet, that's okay. But then I don't know. It looked like the other guy was going to do a Samoan drop on him or something.
Exactly. He managed to grab the guy and basically pull the guy out down on top of him, which made it look like he was taking a Samoan drop, like you said. But got it. Like I would have had to get up and just small package him or something and not just go ahead and let that be the finish. But whoever in the back was like, hell yeah, we need a fucking slow-mo replay of that. I've never seen that move before. Like, well, of course you haven't, asshole. That wasn't what was supposed to happen. But anyway, we returned, and Corey tells us all about the out-of-town action coming up around the territory, including this show coming to West Point, Mississippi next month that I went to. And if you look down the list, Lawler, Jarrett, Miss Texas, Bergstrom, Brian Christopher, Gaylord, King and Dahl, I can tell you almost none of those people were there. But we'll talk about it more when we get to July. When we get to July, we'll talk a little more about that show.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, they had one for Jonesboro, Arkansas also. So that confused they confused Lawler. So
Exactly. Yeah, Lawler had to come out and explain that he gave the wrong date, and there's a different date for when they're going to do the dinner and the movie. And he gets that corrected, and then we get to we get to what he's really here for. We get to the heart of the matter. We talk about some softball, BT.
oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
really,
we got to do that. Yeah,
that's
don't
why
we
we
have
tune in.
Brian comes out too for it?
So Lawler explains that at a recent softball game between his team and Brian's Bombers, Brian had made an additional side bet that the losing team would pay $100 donated to Le Bonheur Hospital if they lost. And he then said that Brian's team lost, and Brian abruptly left without paying his $100. And he called him out to come pay it on TV. So Brian walks out, says that they didn't lose and that Lawler had the umpires in his back pocket. They cheated, but he'd still donate the money, and he throws the $100 on the ground, and Lawler has to pick the donation money up off the floor. So this kind of a weird thing.
No, we're doing angles over the softball games. It's more. He spent more time. I started to log in how long it was that they did this. He spends more time talking about that than he does Papa Shango.
Dude, if somebody went through all these episodes and logged the time, like you say, of the time Lawler spends promoting softball games compared to promoting that Monday night's match, it would, I'm sure, be absolutely appalling what the percentages look like, because he spent much more time talking about softball than he did.
It goes back to they know it's close to the end, maybe, and it's just almost like they don't care.
Yeah, it really is. It's disheartening, especially when you know that you're going to be following this for the whole year, and you just hope that it somehow finds a way to get better. I found it funny that he also mentions that the WWF has the King of the Ring coming up, and he teases that he might show up there. And of course, we know how that played out. That's where Lawler showed up and attacked Bret Hart after he won the King of the Ring. So
right.
And now we finally do this freaking call-in contest we've been teasing the whole time. And
more time on something that doesn't matter. I'm sorry.
Exactly. And this produced an audio clip that, if played with no context years later, doesn't age very well. So
all right, I got to hear this because I'm sorry I fast forwarded through this. So
that's right. We have a special number now. Let's explain this thing again. You call this number only, no other number. First 15 people who call. First 15 people who get through.
Kids. We want to take some kids with us. You know, the adults can call for them, but we want to take kids. Okay.
Okay. So this is for
it's for kids.
It's definitely for kids. Thankfully, they tried to have a similar contest where you could skip school for a day and hang out with the Master of Terror, but that got canceled. They didn't actually follow through with that.
I don't get the joke. Y'all have to tell me about that after we quit recording.
Well, that's because you must have been hanging out at schools with Master of Terror or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then we see highlights from last week's shenanigans with Burt Prentice and Simply Divine and Lawler, which led to that singles match, which led to Lawler getting spike pile driven so that he was too injured to have his title match against Papa Shango last week, so that realistically he could go to Monday Night Raw and not be at the Coliseum. And in exchange, we got the Undertaker. Again, I think we won that round, fans, but they ain't gonna talk about it. So it's one of those things where I feel like maybe sometime randomly we'll probably get a clip of the Undertaker match just somewhere along the way with no real context, or it'll be in a highlight video somewhere.
Yeah. What about you, Josh? With that, you said that was part of my disappointment of the show, was that I was looking forward, but I guess as you were watching as a kid, you was looking forward to it too.
Well, that's what I was saying. Just like 91, Leatherface and Lawler crushed me. It was the same situation. I remember being crushed because I was so excited that the matchup was happening. And then it's just like, we're not even going to mention it. It never happened. Let's get this just random guy in a mask out here. Here's your second opponent. It's just really,
and it's weird. The same angle. It's the same exact angle, except the tearing up of the contract.
So guys, we're going to check out today's main event, which is Simply Divine, Rex King and Steve Dahl taking on Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett. We're actually going to watch this.
I want to say while you're getting this ready, I have no problem in Rex King and Steve Dahl's tights. Y'all are
What?
always talking about. I have zero problem with those. I just want y'all to know that.
Hygienically, they probably have lots of problems with those tights. You would think.
To be fair, I always
also-
assumed that you didn't have a
All right,
problem with those.
thank you. I appreciate it. Also, Rex King, I know this is probably just me and my silliness, but I think it's hilarious that his name is Rex King, which was the two Moondog names, and then he's
Right.
going against Spot Moondog. I'm just like, wait, I would be so confused.
True.
Lawler's over there. He's wanting everybody to know that the softball game is going to be at 2:00, and the little kids will be at the theater.
Seriously, we want some kids to go with us. Do you know?
Seriously.
Let me tell you something. You might beat us in a tag team match, but you would not beat us in a softball game. And if you don't believe us, we'll come to your town.
Guy Coffey's number is. By the way, before this gets started, I want y'all to know this is the longest shine I think I've ever seen. When this is supposed to be, a good tag team. They're the champions. You're supposed to give them some heat. They don't get heat for like the first, I don't know, 75% of the match. So.
They're the champions. We're supposed to pay money to buy a ticket to come watch them wrestle Jeff Jarrett and a different partner Monday night. But we're going to watch Lawler and Jarrett, get the best of them here on TV.
Get total best of them during the whole match. I mean, you're just like, okay, so they start heat deep, and then a hot tag that's kind of flat. Then, we go to the finish. Look, I'm sorry, spoiler alert. We go to the finish, but man, just watch this. The heels get nothing.
All right, folks, stick around and see if everything Brian just said actually happens that way, or if he's just swerving you, bro.
Bro, I swear.
Polka dot lights Jerry's got
That's
on
what
there.
I was just going to point out. You cannot overcome Polka Dot King. Like, he was Flower Power King last week, pimping them polka dots this week. I love it.
King had some wild outfits in this era.
And
was
Jeff's
he
got
getting this from
the.
your grandmother, or did he have somebody else that was doing his stuff?
No, the only time I ever remember Lawler getting anything from my grandma was, ironically, what brought my grandmother into the business, like doing sewing for different wrestlers and stuff. Like, my uncle brought a mask home. I guess it was maybe 1981 or 82 or some shit like that. I forget what they actually said, but it was around that time. And it was one that Lawler had made somewhere else. And he asked her, do you think you could make one of these? And she made, a few. And he took them back and then was basically like, well, make me 100. So my grandma and my uncle both, tag team and made 100 masks and reap the rewards that way, and started off that whole deal. But that's the only time I ever remember her doing any business with Lawler.
Yeah, I wonder, because we joked about this, but you're pretty much sure that Jeff, Brian, Christopher, and Lawler all get their stuff from the same person, because you'll see material that's the same color and everything.
The same floral patterns.
Yeah. You're just like that. She says, well, I can make another set of tights if you want me to. Well, just
hey, you want roses? I got roses for next week.
So
a discount on that.
So so the heels have got nothing yet. Absolutely nothing. All right, here we got a headlock, but what do we say? Yeah.
I love it.
And I think it's so funny that TD Steele just went from being a jobber to a referee.
The only referee.
Yeah, because Kevin's not here, so.
This mug has refereed every match on television since Kevin went to Philadelphia. I don't know where Frank Morrell went, but he ain't here.
Right. He still didn't get anything.
No, I mean, Rex King is Rexy B fine this week, apparently. Steve Dawes like, fuck a bunch of this. Lawler's like, nope, afraid not.
Let me tell you something, son.
Y'all want me to try to do the invitation again? No. Richard said I can't do it. I'm sorry. Richard.
You can't do it when Danny Davis isn't on here. And this is a whole show without Danny Davis, by the way.
I
which
know,
I'm not happy about.
He gets mentioned that he's going to face Tony Falk. I'm like, what the hell?
The Legend Killer.
legend. He wasn't a killer.
Oh,
He
I'm
was
sorry. He was a
himself.
legend. Yeah, yeah.
That would be suicide.
They don't look like they're shaking to me. They don't look scared to me. Who's running, Prentice? Yeah, Prentice is the one
Still no heat.
And it makes you wonder, did they talk about this beforehand? Like, did they know they weren't going to get shit in this? Or is Lawler and Jarrett just doing
Lawler
like
Jarrett
this
said,
because
we're
it's
not
funny?
giving you shit. Just come out there.
This seems like something Lawler would do just as a rib. Like, let's don't give them nothing.
What the hell?
The rarely seen standing bulldog there from a headlock.
Man, I should have done that as my finisher.
This just feels like screwing around at a spot show type stuff.
It
is
does.
What it feels like.
Well, you would see a lot of they would get the babyface would get tons at a spot show.
Oh yeah.
And then the heel would cut them off, get a little bit of heat, hot tag, boom, 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 it's over. Did we gonna start some heat here? Hold on just a minute.
Lawler's coming around there trying to stop it.
We got heat. Yep, here we go. I don't know how many minutes that was, but that was
And
a
it's on Jarrett.
long amount of. Well, you
At
knew the
least
hot
4.
tag was going too, by the way. So
I could be so much more into this if those thongs weren't present.
hey, I'm having no problem with them.
Meanwhile, Brian's right the opposite.
That's right. Man, if I had a fat ass like that, I'd be wearing thongs too. Oh, here we go. Oh, hot tag. That was so flat. Come on,
Hot
guys.
tag after a couple of back elbows.
After a
is all
couple
the heat.
moves. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Oh, God,
Strap
no.
down. Boom, boom, boom. All right, ready for the DQ. Come on, he says.
Double
Come on,
noggin knocker in the words of Gorilla Monsoon.
Oh, he's going for
Okay,
that
the
pile
match of
driver
1,000 non-delivered pile drivers. We're finally going to. Nope, we're not.
Up.
I was like, I want my $100 back from the softball game.
And then I said, get those kids in that theater. That's all we need.
Lawler's down there right now going, ref, did they find any kids? He's like, shut up.
And we're going to tell everybody where it's at so they can bring more kids.
They whipped Jarrett through. He had to basically stop, go around Lawler, hit the other ropes, go around Lawler again.
Hog report.
Good
been
God.
filed.
I didn't even notice that. Dang.
And
Dude should have wore something. Jesus. He just came out in his white shorts. hanging low. Says the water cold? Well, it's deep too. Is what he said. Richard Pryor, thank you.
It's like that Sonny and Philly episode. We
He
could
just
say we
got
had
his-
somebody hang dong on this episode of USWA.
I was like, gee.
out here with them boat shoes on. He's just like, screw it.
That'll be the title on WrestleCopia this week. Contract Incorporated hangs dong.
I kind of like this finish if it hadn't happened for the last 6 weeks.
Every week it's like the weekly brawl to end the show. Exactly. All right, fellas, what'd you think about that?
I think to say, well, I said, just a lot of shine for the baby faces when you got heel champions in there. I've seen this happen a couple times, mainly like at a spot show, but they've done it a couple times where the baby faces get everything, and the heels take over. Like if they're champs, the heels will take over and then finish it off and finish, baby faces with a cheat or something and win. I've seen that happen a few times, but geez, this was just like a squash match, and all of a sudden they get a few moves in a really sloppy hot tag. So,
and I always look at this from the perspective of these shows are trying to sell Monday night.
That's it.
It's
That's all
like,
they're doing.
All right, so you're wanting me to buy a ticket to see Jeff Jarrett and Moondog Spot wrestle the tag champs, but the tag champs couldn't even get more than a couple of back elbows in on Jeff Jarrett and his partner.
Right.
Who allegedly isn't as tough as the Moondog. Why do I care about this match? What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I was just kind of disappointed. I mean, it would be different if Lawler and Jarrett needed to look real good for Monday night, but there was no reason to just do that to King and Doll. And then, like you said, how am I supposed to be excited for this Moondog match when they couldn't even beat Lawler? and with no weapons, So I don't know. I mean, it is disappointing, but I'm not surprised at this point.
So we all know people who've been directly involved with Memphis Wrestling over the years. Richard's talked about it here on the show in the past, that so much of this was just get there Saturday morning, look around, and figure some stuff out. This contract incorporated business, this just feels like this guy was there and they're like, have you got a mask? Yeah, I don't have my gear. Well, just come out in your short pants. That's fine. And they just threw that whole little scenario together with zero thought. And
well, he had
it
to take his shirt off too. So go ahead, take your shirt off, and come on out. And they didn't trust him to do a promo or anything. They just had him over there standing to the side. So I really think him and the Purple Demon, I really think they were a team. Not maybe a team, but they worked for the same promotion. They came in because of Brian Christopher. And because Brian knew of them and had them come in, because they're losing everybody. There's not anyone here really anymore. Even Master Terra wasn't here for this week.
And I have to figure this contract incorporated guy must have been terrible just conversationally, because we've let Jeff Gaylord come out and do promos weekly. We've let Mark Freer come out and do more than one promo. So to not let this guy utter a word, they must have known that he was going to make Miss Texas look like a Rhodes Scholar or something. So that probably was at least a good call on their part, was not to have him cut a promo. So, guys, let's take our very last podcast commercial break. And when we come back, you know what it's time for. It's time to run down the card. And then we're going to talk about what you guys think of it and how it turned out.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up and coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
All right, we thank our sponsors, as Wolfie D says, our dope ass sponsors for supporting the show.
We thank you for showing us Miss Simpson there. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I threatened to use that one at least once every show, and I think I may make good on that. we've lost Josh again. We're going to run down the card and see if he can pop back in time to answer these questions. But right now, BT, let's see what all this business we've seen today was building towards.
Come on down. Bring the whole family. Mark Freer will be going against the Untouchable in the opening match. Freer with great balance in the ring. I'm still amazed at that move.
Oh, wasn't that great?
Yeah, that he put on Purple Demon to wrap that match up right there. Yeah. He will be going against the Untouchable in the opener Monday night. Danny Davis goes against the legend, Tony Falk. Yeah. And then Principal C.W. Bergstrom will be in there with that board. 5 licks to the loser. He goes against Jeff Gaylord. Gaylord has been practicing home run swings in the backyard. Loser gets 10 lashes. Miss Simpson goes against Miss Texas. Miss Texas says, look out, Miss Simpson. He put her on notice right here today. Southern title will be at stake then. Contract Incorporated. Brian Christopher had his opinion, and his opinion was wrong. Purple Demon was not Contract Incorporated, but he was introduced to Contract Incorporated just a couple of minutes ago right here in the studio. They will meet for the Southern Heavyweight title Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum. Brian Christopher defending against Contract Incorporated. Then, the USWA tag titles will be on the line. Rex King and Steve Dahl with Bert Prentice going against Jeff Jarrett and Moondog Spot. Look for another Moondog match. Last time around, it was Spot that got disqualified, got Jeff and the Moondog disqualified. This time, there will be no time limit, no disqualification. Rex King, Steve Dahl, Bert Prentice have to bring the World Tag titles to the ring. And if they lose the titles, no time limit, no DQ. Final match of the night. The unified title at stake. Papa Shango is the champion. Coming in from the WWF again. This time, he is the unified champion, but the former champion has plans to take back the belt. Let me tell you, the King, Jerry Lawler, will be going against Papa Shango in the main event Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Well, all right, guys, there you see what it's all built up to. So it's that time once again. Let's ask you the questions and see how you feel. Number one, and we'll let the special guest answer first here, Josh. Number one, what was your least favorite part of today's episode, BT?
Ooh, least favorite part. Ugh. I don't know. You know that y'all. I like those thongs a lot. Oh, you said least favorite.
Least favorite part.
I think I'll go with the Brian Christopher angle because it was just a repeat. It's laziness is what I figure it was. Just laziness booking. Had someone backstage. Let's do it. We may not ever see this guy again. So, and he reacted the same way with this guy, as you noted, as he did with the Undertaker. And also, we didn't get Undertaker clips. So I guess that's one of my least favorite parts.
Josh?
Yep, that's my exact least favorite point. Like I said, I was absolutely crushed watching this as a 10-year-old. Like, there is so much more they could have done after The Undertaker. I mean, I feel like just bringing out some random masked man, even though he's got a good body and all that, he's intimidating looking. And Brian, he tried to play to it, but still, after The Undertaker, it just that it did not feel right. It just felt like an extreme letdown comparable to last week. And like BT said, no mention whatsoever, no clip, no nothing. Just, really disappointing.
Yes. So the inverse of that. What was your favorite part of today's episode, BT?
I'll go with the main event. I really, even though I thought it was, like I said, tore it apart psychology wise, but I thought it's my favorite part because I just thought it was unusual the way they did it. I can't think of it. I do like the idea of being able to spend so much time putting over softball and getting kids to the theater. I really like that too. But I'll go with the main event. It was fun.
Josh?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of shining points on this one, to be honest with you, Gene. We had a lot of new faces versing like just random job guys, and they weren't even familiar job guys. And the new stars that wrestled aren't familiar either, and they're not very good. I mean, so, really picking at the bones here, like the C.W. Bergstrom stuff, That's gonna, even Bert, like usually Bert in this situation, Bert will always be my favorite thing. But even his stuff, it just kind of felt like I'm gonna say this stuff real quick and just move past all this. So CW Bergstrom paddling the shit out of the Scorpion, like that was, I laughed out loud. So if that brought that out of me, then it was a good point.
Didn't they say licks and lashes? I meant to note that. One time it was licks. You get licks with a paddle. If you look at the Monday night card, licks with a paddle and lashes with a belt. Just so y'all get that correct. So
that's right, because I just remember that first promo where Jeff Jarrett said that CW Bergstrom likes to give kids 60 licks when they're supposed to get 6. And I was like, dude, you got to add with a paddle. You can't just arbitrarily say he likes to give them 60 licks.
He's a child abuser.
Child abuser. So that's not that anybody asked, but my favorite part of today's episode was the fact that all we got out of Jeff Gaylord was a 30-second promo, and we didn't have to see him wrestle. So that, for me, is a win anytime that's the case. So lastly, and I think there's not going to be a lot of suspense in this one, would today's television show have inspired you to buy a ticket for Monday night's card back in 1993? And in case they're not watching on video and can't see Brian's head shaking, no. Brian, say it out loud for the audio listeners.
Hell no. No, I wouldn't. This is not a show I would want to go to. I mean, there's two. And let me just say, I was a huge Papa Shango fan. And loved the whole gimmick and everything, but him against, I'm thinking, I don't know the results, but I'm thinking Lawler's going to win, and the other match that would give me any interest would be the tag team match, and I figured Spot and Jarrett are going over in this, or there'll be some kind of DQ fuckery going on. So yeah, no, I'm not going. I'm not even going to ask to go to this one.
Josh?
Nope. I'm staying at home. I'll watch Raw or something like that. Like, Papa Shango versus Lawler at this point. Like, I feel like Lawler, like BT said, Lawler is going to win, because even as a 10-year-old, I didn't see Papa Shango long for USWA. And it feels like he hasn't been at TV in the last few weeks, and Burt Prentice ain't even talking about him this week, so he's probably about done. And there's nothing else. Uncle Danny's versing Tony Falk. I mean, and there's nothing else happening. Everything else is just kind of the same stuff over and over again, beating the same drum. I would go just to see CW Bergstrom versus Gaylord and see who gets paddled. That's about it.
Wow. Well, all right, guys, it's time to head down to the Coliseum and see what's happening. Now, we don't play this every week, but I feel like in honor of Brian being here, we need to play our game show. In disqualification. Now, keep in mind, we have 7 matches this week, guys. BT, how many do you predict will end in a disqualification?
I'm going to say 4.
All right, Josh?
I'm going to go with, I'm going to have to go 1 over 5. I feel like there's going to be a couple pinfalls, Shango, Lawler being one of them, probably the tag team match, but everything else probably just.
All right, folks, here we go. June 14th, 1993 at the Mid-South Coliseum. Now, remember, last week with The Undertaker, we drew 1,750 people. With this card, with WWF world-renowned superstar Papa Shango, we draw 850 people.
Jesus.
At the Mid-South Coliseum. It kind of puts it in perspective. Like, we're used to these things averaging lately anywhere from 800 on a normal week to 1,000 on a really good week. And me and Ray Russell was covering 85. And there was a week he's like, man, it's really down this week. They only drew 3,000 to the Coliseum, which is pretty sad in these days. And I was like, dude, 3,000 in 1993 would have been calls for a fucking parade to be thrown by Jarrett and Lawler. Like, we ain't seen 3,000 since we've started 1993. Not even come close to 3,000 since we started 1993. Now, we did have a couple of card changes here, apparently some no-shows. So as you'll notice when I read the first couple matches, the matches have been changed, I guess, based on who was there. So in the opening match of the night, Nightmare Danny Davis defeats the Natural Bo Alexander.
Oh, wow.
Match number 2, the Legend Tony Falk defeats Mark Freer. In the third match, C.W. Bergstrom defeats Jeff Gaylord in the paddle on a pole match, which means Jeff had to take the licks. Jeff got licked, I guess you could say there.
5 licks. Even
Now,
though
if
Jeff won, he was going to beat him to death. Even though the stipulation said 5 licks. So I guess he wouldn't
up.
He couldn't stand up. His ass hurt so bad he couldn't stand up, which, that's happened to me before, but it has nothing to do with licks, put it that way.
Well, there was probably some licking involved somewhere along the way, but anyway.
In the front end of it.
In the front end, so to speak, if you will. So this one surprised me in a number of accounts. Miss Simpson beat Miss Texas. There's not a disqualification. There's not straight up. Miss Simpson beat Miss Texas. Number 5, Southern Heavyweight Champion Brian Christopher defeated Contract Incorporated. In the 6th match, USWA Tag Team Champions Simply Divine, Rex King, and Steve Dahl beat Jeff Jarrett and Moondog Spot.
Well, that's surprising.
And in the main event, the Unified World Champ Papa Shango beat Jerry the King Lawler by disqualification, our one and only disqualification out of 7 matches. Holy cow. I mean, again, it feels like somehow somebody used a time machine and went like, hey, man, these guys on this podcast are dunking on y'all about all these fucking DQs. Like, y'all need to fix this. I don't know when we've had a card with only 1 disqualification, Josh. I mean, there hasn't been one in weeks, right? If ever.
As far as I remember, there's been at least 2 per show.
Me too. Exactly. I mean, I've been watching this with y'all. I can't remember a show having 1 DQ, and then the match that we for sure thought we knew the result of, that the King was going to win the belt back, and he just didn't do. He could have done one of those promos where he didn't even care. He did really waste more time talking about the kids in the theater and the softball than he did worrying about Papa Shango. And they're going to try to get a 3rd match out of it. Why? It's not drawing.
Yeah, apparently Papa Shango would have to put together a softball team for Jerry Lawler to give an ounce.
And what did they do around the horn of this week? Are you fixing to tell us that?
I don't have that.
Okay.
I wasn't able to find that. It might be in a different newsletter that I can find later. But I will say this. As you noticed, a couple of matches got changed. It was supposed to be Danny Davis versus Tony Falk. They completely did away with that match, which could have happened because both guys were there. But instead, they had Tony Falk beat Mark Freer, who they've been somewhat pushing on TV. So that feels odd because Tony Falk hadn't been on TV since that one time he showed up and wrestled Jeff Jarrett. And then they throw Bo Alexander, who wasn't even on the card, even though he was on TV. He ended up being there and being on the card. But Bo Alexander filled in for one of the Untouchables who was supposed to be wrestling Nightmare Danny Davis. And if you're wondering, well, where was Ronnie Lotz and the Untouchables? Well, they've already company. They lasted 1 week in the USWA and decided, no, 500 miles, we ain't seen nothing, and we rode around the horn, and we ain't seen nothing else, so we out.
Nothing solid here. There's nothing solid. I mean, do you think it was more along the lines of them figuring out Memphis, so to speak, not Memphis figuring out that they didn't have?
No, it was them. I told Gene, I messaged him this week. I think I've met this guy. I think he was a subscriber to. I had a fanzine, a little bulletin that I put out, and I think he was a subscriber to that back in the day. This was we come to Memphis. Everybody and their mamas talked about Memphis. This is one of the places we want to be. We're on Memphis. What the hell are you talking about? $30. So that was kind of probably what happened is I got a payday. I'll see you later. Did you research any of that I sent? He was a former manager and then he owned a restaurant where he got in trouble for. This was later on in life that he had a 2-way mirror in his girls' bathroom at his restaurant. So there you go.
Oh,
I tried
man.
to reach out to him, but I'm not sure it was the actual Ronnie that I did, but I remember a lot of things about this guy, but don't know why. So my memory sucks. But he those two guys just look like, to me, Road Warrior wannabes. They grew up in Chicago. Road Warrior's huge in Chicago. So, push us. But yeah, that was one of those things where we went to Memphis and didn't get paid. So
Yeah, because I mean, sure, it's got to be they quit, because you look at what they're throwing guys like Contract Incorporated out there. They couldn't even come up with a decent name for this guy. They just put a mask on a dude and a pair of shorts and sent him out on TV to set up a Southern heavyweight title match. But you got to look at it like these guys come down from Chicago and they're making $20 and $30 a night. They don't have any ends with anybody. There's not any rats that's going to let them stay at their house for free. They don't have an apartment they can go back to. They don't have all the tricks of the trade that these other guys can do to try to make this little bit of money work, and probably a delay in when they were actually getting some of the pay, because it's not like, like indie guys think like, oh yeah, at the end of the night, if somebody comes and hands you an envelope with, the money in it. Back then they could get a draw sometimes, but most of the time you got a check. You went and hit all these fucking towns and then you waited to get a check. So it was a bigger slap in the face when you've waited a week or two and then you finally get that check and you see how little money you made. If you're getting cash in your pocket every night and you're able to get by, but if you struggle on the road for 2 weeks and then you get that amount of money, it hits you hard. So I figure that first week when they got that first paycheck, they were just like, no, dude, we're getting back to Chicago. Like, we can starve in Chicago. Like, we don't need this. So
that's exactly what yeah. And then the untouchable guy, one of them said, no, I'll do it. And then he had second thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Before Monday night got there, no, screw this. I'm staying in Chicago also.
So in summation, and I know Brian said this before we started, we were recording, but we weren't on the show yet. This was definitely just a very lackluster show. It wasn't particularly just bad. It just wasn't good. There was just nothing about it. Like, there's no reason for you to be like, oh, I want to watch that episode. There's just nothing here other than just kind of the fascination of some of the weird stuff they did, like the whole concept of this Contract Incorporated thing, just to go back and look at it and go, what the hell was this? So, I don't know. Like I say, we're in a rough patch here in our 1993 viewing. I'm hoping things are going to pick up. I do know that they are to some degree. We're going to be seeing Owen Hart very soon. We're going to be seeing a very young New Jack coming to town. So there's some fun stuff on the horizon. So folks, stick with us. Don't get bummed out and leave us just yet. Things are going to get better. And at least when they're not good, we try to have some fun with it.
Have some fun with it. Yeah. I mean, I'm enjoying it, even though y'all had a couple weeks back, y'all shit on a show that I actually like. So I'm still having fun watching it. I fast forward through a lot more than I did when I first started, but yeah.
You and Richard both.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but just like wrestling is, man, like sometimes it takes times of chaos to bring good stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it takes them failing and realizing, oh my God, we got to really think, or we got to really get somebody in here that's going to stick, not just look at their poster. Oh, he looks good. Bring him in.
I got a question though, for both of y'all. During this period of time, since I told y'all I was kind of out of wrestling, is this the period of time where the WWE has pretty much took over and the territories are just completely dying and there's not extra people to bring in? Is that where we're at?
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's just outlaw promotions that are running, independent.
Because we got a lot of guys from Portland. We got Dial and King came in, CW came in. All those guys came from Portland. Was Portland shut down by this time?
Yes, by 93, Portland was done.
Right.
So yeah, almost by this point, I can't think of an actual legitimate functioning territory that was really still running on a weekly basis or had TV or anything substantial.
What gets me is Burt Prentice, of all people, he did that, which Burt could always get a crowd, but he did that in a tent And all I could think of was one of those religious tents. He did it in one of those big tents that they used to have the prayer at, and drew as much as they're drawn at the Mid-South Coliseum or more. So it to me, it wasn't that you couldn't draw a crowd in the area. It was you were giving them so much shit that no one wanted to come see the shows.
Jerry Jarrett was pretty checked out at this time, and Lawler, he's worried about softball. He's worried about his WWF commitments. You know, as you can see, he's talking about King of the Ring out here. He's going up there doing commentary, and he's just kind of half in, half out with USWA. So it's really just more of that. It's like USWA was just kind of on autopilot right now, and nobody really had, you know, their hands on the wheel and was steering it in any particular direction. It was just kind of existing at this point.
Jason Walker that we talked about, he actually said that Jerry Jarrett was the one that had that meeting, but which I thought this was really funny. It's the sign of the times. He said that Jarrett had sent him a written letter to come to Memphis. A written letter. I'm just like, oh, that is crazy. So, but he didn't. So Eddie Marlin is backstage, still talk about that truck wreck probably. So,
oh yeah, telling everybody how, you know, God spoke to him and said that him and Jeff Jarrett still had some good stuff to do, which I guess included, you know, his WWF run upcoming and TNA and everything else that Jeff went on to do. So I guess he was right in that regard. But yeah, I can say some fun stuff. I'm looking forward to, you know, Owen Hart coming in. Eventually Brett will be here.
Maybe PG-13 will show back.
Yeah, where the hell is PG-13?
They've been AWOL for 2 or 3 weeks now. They had a match on TV with Simply Divine for no apparent reason.
Good match, yeah.
And then they've been gone. And I don't know, maybe you can get something out of Wolfie D, BT, if you can message him, ask him what. I messaged him asking him what was the deal with the Phantom babyface turn, where they were heel one week and the next week they come out of the babyface curtain and were babyfaces. And I don't know, I couldn't get him to respond to him anymore. So, so maybe you can get some insight on that and what they were doing, because I was told they got heat for working quote unquote outlaw shows during these times whenever they weren't getting booked in Memphis for whatever reason. Jamie and Wolfie would go work other shows because they're wrestlers. They got to go make money. And then they'd get heat from Jerry Jarrett. Well, why are you ever working these outlaw shows?
Yeah, there's an outlaw show that his dad, Wolfie's dad, was part of. That was one of the very first show I ever wrestled as the BT Express was on that show. And his dad was on that show. But it was in Columbia, Tennessee, I believe. And they would work those shows. And Wolfie worked them way before he came here. So.
Yeah.
Now, he met Jamie. My best recollection, thoughts of what he told me was he met Jamie at those shows.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And real quick, before we wrap this up, just to circle back to something else you were saying about Burt Prentice. And I don't make anything off this. I'm just, if you read Scott Till's book, you know, with Burt Prentice before.
And my name's in it, by the way. You
number one, I was going to plug. The first thing I was going to plug is he mentions BT in there.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
So he does acknowledge his lifestyle in that book, and and on a perhaps related or unrelated note, BT is mentioned there a couple times. But the thing I learned about Burt reading that book. You could have took Burt and dropped him out of a freaking airplane at any spot in the United States and probably in a foreign country. And within 6 days, he will have TV set up. He will have access to a ring, and he will start a promotion and be outdrawing whoever's within 500 miles of him within 2 weeks. It's amazing. He can get talent to come from here, there, and yon, you know, out to Iowa. For the random promotion in freaking Iowa, there's guys traveling from Texas and, you know, Florida and all these places to Iowa, and he gets TV just within a matter of days.
He did the same thing
amazing.
Here in Jonesboro. He had the gimmick where he did it on Monday nights, and he had a gimmick where he would go into a business, say he went to Joe's Crab Shack or something, and say, "Hey, I tell you what, for $500, I'll tell everybody in the crowd that you sponsored this event, and this event is brought to you by you." And he'd tell that on television, and everyone that walked through the door that knew about that sponsorship, they could either get free tickets at Joe's or they walk through the door and you know about it. You just had to say to Bert at the very front of the show, "Hey man, I saw that about Joe's. Can I get in for free?" Yeah, come on. So not a lot of paid per se customers, but he would draw anywhere from 100 to 300 people in an armory because of that gimmick. And he had regulars that would do the front rows that paid every week for the front row seats. Every week.
And here's the thing too, you had those folks, but then if you had 5 or 6 businesses in town paying you money on the front end for their advertising, you weren't beholden to whether or not you drew, because you already had that money, and that's the same as ticket money, but you got it up front. And so if you don't draw, you still got that business's money. Because that was my favorite part. I told Josh and Richard the other day, I was going back watching some of that Ozark Mountain Wrestling, which is over there in Jonesboro. And my favorite part of those shows was those local commercials of Bert going to these people's business. Come down here to the furniture store this week. And he's cutting these promos, advertising these people's business. And I love watching that shit. It's great. But like I said, he did it exactly the way you said. He'd get money from them to promote their business on the show. He'd have their banner on the side of the ring. He'd promote them at the show. And he usually did end up drawing, like you say, 200 or 300 people. But even if he didn't, he had that money to run the show up front because they already paid him the advertising money. And plus selling spots on TV. Once he got that TV, everybody knows TV ads are, worth some money. So he could go sell TV spots to those businesses too. It wasn't just, hey, I'll put your name on the apron and I'll mention you. He was able to basically turn around and sell TV time.
He got enough sponsors and enough money that the only other promotion to ever do this is the WWE, but he was able to put a show in Arkansas State University, and at the time was called the Convocation Center. I don't know what it's called now. It's owned by a bank, or it's, Allstate Bank or something, a center. But he was the only one. They drew like 800 people for that show. And I mean, for any wrestling promotion to think that they could do that would just be laughed at. But he had enough. The show was already paid for. No one, if no one showed up, he didn't care. He always had his show paid for.
I mean, you hear people throw the word around carny like it's a bad thing or something.
Still,
but Bert that's what he was. But he was good at what he did. He was an old school promoter, and he could have applied that to wrestling or the circus or the carnival or whatever he wanted to bring to a town and make money. And he did it up until he died. I mean, that's one of the people I know that, like you said, when all the territories went away and there was only, you could count on probably both hands how many people was making a living promoting professional wrestling whose name wasn't McMahon or, one of the big companies. He's one of them. That's how he made his living up till the day he died. And you gotta, whatever you think of the man personally or any of all the wild stories you hear about him, you got to give him credit for that. It's
he was always nice to me. I mean, he didn't like what I said sometimes, but he was always nice to me. So
yeah, Bert, he still had TV here in Jackson whenever he passed away. I mean, I remember
sure did. Yeah,
watching a show that was after he had passed. I guess it was some that they still had in the can or whatever. Tommy Wildfire Rich was on there.
That's right.
Doing a main event or something. I mean, it was really cool. But yeah, you figure a guy like that would have excelled in real estate or whatever. He could convince you to buy whatever he was trying to sell. I mean, and that is a superpower to a certain extent. If you can get multiple people to invest all kind of money just on your word, Bert was very convincing.
Absolutely. And I do enjoy seeing him on these shows, and the stuff with him and Lawler last week was really fun. This week, I agree that I don't remember which one of you said it, or you both may have said it, but he was really subdued to some degree. He did get to yelling, but I don't know. It was kind of like he was just kind of phoning it in, like he's kind of going through the motions. I really didn't believe what he was saying this week. He was just kind of there.
He did get excited at that one time, flapping his arms around. So I know he was excited about something.
He got excited.
Been wrestling.
I don't know. It just wasn't in it like he was last week. And when he gave Lawler that splash and got up and did that dancing strut thing in the ring,
it was excellent.
Thought it was Doug Gilbert. That's Doug Gilbert's dance.
That's King of Rock and Roll. So remember, folks, please subscribe, rate, and review the show for us. go and check out all the wonderful pro wrestling content over at WrestleCopia.com. BT, tell us what they'll find if they go to STS. Oh my God, we screwed that up.
STSclub.com. Hell, I don't know. Where are you trying to
STSpod.club. It's right there under BT's name if you're looking at the screen. If you're listening, it's STSpod.club.
We do the Memphis review show. We're part of providing content for the brand new Memphis show. We just finished this weekend was episode 195. We do videos. I do about 14 videos a week for them and the review show. We do average of 2 episodes a week. So we do that and something else. Been doing that for almost, I say average because last time on here I kept saying 2 episodes a week, but in November, December, and July we kind of do light months. But we've already done 103 episodes, and this is right here in November. So excited about that. We do WTF News Desk. It's bizarre, crazy stuff that we do that we find every month. Me and Lance do that. Lance actually does it's called The Record Story, does a music podcast, and we do all kinds of things. So we're like the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame that they do every year. I've been part of the Hall of Fame voting for probably 30 years, 35 years. So we go over that. We observe the Observer and talk about that. And every once in a while, we have Gene on there to do a show. And we've had Josh and Richard. We actually started Dynamite. We did the very first 12 shows, right, Josh? We did the first 12 shows of Dynamite with AEW.
Yeah, something like that. 12. It was on up there.
And then we were doing some more, and they kind of fell off, and they don't like AEW anymore, and then I quit watching AEW, and the only person to watch it is Lance. So we don't do that show, but I do a variety of different shows. If you are an old school Memphis fan, we've got a show called Cassette Wrestling News, which has a shoot interview, which is really Josh really liked this, and I did too. It's amazing. Danny Davis talking about stuff way before it was cool to talk about stuff. We have an Owen Hart. We have 2 Eddie Gilberts. We got a Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler has a lot of nice things to say about me on one of those podcasts, so need to do it. But Cassette Wrestling News would really fit right in with USWA. It was recorded. It was produced in Evansville, Indiana during the 90s, and we got 35 cassettes that we're putting from the cassette to the podcast. And putting it up. We put out 2 or 3 of those a year, so I'm making them last. But I guess that's about it, man. Just go to stspod.club. We got our sponsors and everything. There's a link of all links in the right-hand corner. You can hit that. I do a Shiznit Minute every day. I'm constantly doing something to promote the podcast. So
it's true. He really is. Also, you can check out go ahead.
Well, you made a joke one time. If you didn't see BT on Twitter advertise this podcast, then just wait a few minutes because he'll do it again. So there we go.
Exactly. You can set your watch every hour on the hour. It's coming.
It's only 4 times a day now, so come on, give me a break.
You can check out the podcast I do every week with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich, Dangerous Conversations, by going to DougGilbertPodcast.com. You can find all the links related to that show there. You also can find P3 Radio wherever quality podcasts are served. What are y'all talking about this week, Josh?
Oh, come on. Wait, guys. Josh, I've got to do this. So I got to do P3 Radio. Y'all almost got on my trademark shooting a shiznit last week. So I just want to tell y'all that's what it is. It's 2 old friends that sit down, and I have been a fan of it since the first Danny Davis interview. And I sit and listen to these 2 guys every week. And I want to tell you, here was the highlights from this week. I'm sorry I'm stepping on you, Josh.
No, you're good.
I want you to know I still listen, even though I don't tell y'all I listen. So I kayfabe y'all. Richard told all the jokes that he'd already told on his Facebook page, and he laughed at his own jokes. So that was the first thing he did. They made fun of somebody with CTE, which they like handicapped people. They make fun of handicapped people. A lot of Paul and Tyson streaming talk. I don't know if you know this, Gene, but everyone had problems with the stream. Josh
watching.
had to tell Richard about the plot of Nightmare on Elm Street because Richard's a pussy and he doesn't watch horror
Completely in the
movies.
dark about horror
That's
movies.
right. P. Diddy, they talked about P. Diddy. There was some talk about T-Pain and Zuckerberg doing a song together. And I just want you to know, one of the biggest highlights of P3 Radio was an episode back in the day where they talked about Tupperware and the spaghetti stains. So that's the kind of stuff you get on P3 Radio. I just thought I'd talk you up, man. I'm your hype man today.
There you go, Josh. You couldn't buy a bigger
P3 Radio on all podcast catchers. There you go.
Everywhere, even
Everywhere.
X videos.
Even in countries we didn't even know existed. So there you go.
Is there anything you can add to that, Josh?
Well, my favorite thing we talked about on this past week's episode was, well, I don't know how my algorithm's so screwed up, but I just found this random church video that was essentially a dude who had his heart and soul preaching. It was a African-American church. So he was like really animated, and the bishop just shows up and stands on the side of the stage and just completely interjects. And I mean, breaks down the audience and says, if you parked in this section, your car's getting towed. The guy's doing the sound. Do you know what gain is? Not volume, gain. What you hear back there ain't what you hear back up here. And da-da-da-da-da. I mean, and we kind of dissect that whole situation. See what M.I.A would think if it happened at her church and stuff. It was pretty fun.
I apologize again for the M.I.A.
Well, you'll be hearing from Richard's attorney about that.
You're going to get a text for
coming
sure.
days.
Awful.
And I know people think I forgot about this, but before we go, now that we've talked about what happened on P3 Radio, once again, Dave Brown's bummed out, guys.
Oh man, come on!
And we got to find out what is bumming Dave Brown out this week. Oh no, it's this.
Richard is on the podcast. That is a fucking shoot. Legit, that man's Halloween costume.
Yeah,
like,
if you're watching the video.
He walked around our neighborhood. We live in the same neighborhood. He walked around our entire neighborhood wearing that shit. I love it.
Hey, big thumbs up to Richard. He's a good dad. So yeah.
If
Definitely.
you're watching the video and you look at this picture, you're going to think that I took Richard's face and put it on the front of this. But no, that is
I did too.
This picture was texted to both me and Josh. This is 100% legitimate. Actually, I got it 2 different times. This was the time he initially tried it on. And then there's other pictures, like Josh said, of him out and about in the neighborhood. So
now, to be fair, his daughter was Cruella DeVille.
Yeah.
So that's why the Dalmatian makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know what any of that means, but I'll take your word for it. That's very, very good. All right, guys. Thank y'all. BT, thank you for joining us. And,
had a fun time. Thank you guys for having me. I love this. I listen to this show every week, and I cuss Gene all the time because I didn't listen to wrestling podcasts until y'all started doing this one, and I listen to the Doug and Tommy podcast every week too. I just listen to clips of podcasts, but I have to get these in. So very good show. Thanks for having me again.
It's much appreciated. And BT was one of the guys who in the beginning is like, who the hell is going to listen to a podcast of 1993 USWA? And I thought, well, I don't have an argument for that, and maybe nobody, but turns out quite a few people are. I get a lot of messages from people all over the world listen to this thing, and it's
really a trip, man.
I hate to say this, and I'm not always right. I know that might surprise you, but I actually said Sean Stasiak was going to be the superstar, not Kurt Angle. So there you go. There's one of my favorite flubs right there. So, yeah, I just didn't get. I wish me and you would have done. This wouldn't have been better with Richard and Josh. It's just so good, and they brought their wrestling comedy, and they don't talk about wrestling a lot on their show now, so they're able to do the wrestling stuff here.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know that I would have went forward with it if they hadn't agreed to do it, but I had this concept. I enjoyed doing the 85 review show with Ray. I enjoyed the reviews me and you used to do with Was It Really That Good? And I kind of had it in my head for about 6 months to do some variation of that. And when I quit comedy for the most part, I thought, well, what's some way I can bring those two worlds together and cover wrestling, but still have fun with it. And the first two guys I thought of was Josh and Richard. And so I reached out. They said they were willing. And initially, I don't think it was even really a, hey, we can do this every week. We'll do it when we can type thing. And that's why in the commercials you hear, I need to go back and fix it. In the commercials you hear on everybody's podcast, it just says me and co-host. It's not that I'm not naming them. It's because initially it was, basically thought that, hey, these guys will jump on when they can. But Richard specifically said, well, I can't commit to this every week. But we started doing it and I was having fun and they were having fun. And so, they've locked in.
I think the big part of the success of it is that I enjoy the part of it is that Josh and Richard both, and you, me, we're all fans of Memphis wrestling. There's a difference between some people in, Britain talking about Memphis wrestling. No stab at those guys, but there's a difference because we were here. Josh and them talking about growing up. They're watching this show every week. Right. And that's the fun part of me. I've been, out of the loop. I was not a Memphis fan at the time. I'm not sure when I picked back up. I do know it's during the USWA days. I do know I covered it every week on my website, but I'll have to go back and look at what year I actually. Is there any plans? I'm asking a spoiler question. Any plans of what the next year y'all guys are going to do?
I think we're just going to follow along into 94 and move through like that. I don't know. Like I said, I talked to Ray about, man, the more 92 I watch, I wish we'd have done 92. And I said, I don't know. I was pondering circling back to either 91 or 92. He's like, yeah, but dude, if you go through 93 consecutively and then you jump back to 91 or 92, work your way through that, then jump over 93 to 94 as a listener. If you're trying to follow along with all this, it's going to be a mess. He said, personally, I think you ought to just follow straight through 94, 95, 96. And then if you get to the end of 96, if you want to do 97, maybe not.
I don't know. We should
then you can jump. Then you can jump back to.
I'd love to hear some of the shows with. I guess it's Corey Macklin's USWA where Richard was on the shows and just hear what was going on. In the background, what was going on.
That was Corey Macklin's Memphis Wrestling, home of Rhythm and Brews. That
BT's giving the results out.
But so what I'm wanting to do is, for this particular program, is we just follow through 93, go into 94, 95, as long as we can all hold out. And if we make it through, we can circle back to 91, 92. There's not enough consecutive 1990 to do it like we do this, that the shows are all over the place. And some of it's just the Texas show and shit like that. But I've got all of 91. I've got all of 92. I've got just about all of 94, 5, and 6. I've actually got all of 97, actually. It's the shits.
Corey draws a huge crowd during his period with Funk and Lawler.
Greg Anthony's got a majority of those shows on his YouTube. So those are out there. We could do something with that. But what I was going to say is I want to do these consecutive week to week, but I'd like to start at least for Patreon, going back and hitting some random, like some of those 1990 shows that I know we're never going to do, and maybe pick some USWA 97 that we know one episode particularly was interesting, but not week to week, and do that for maybe Patreon or my YouTube channel, my other retro wrestling show, is because I'm starting to do random reviews there. But yeah, I think we're just going to roll into 94 and just see how long we can keep this train on the tracks, and as long as people are listening and liking it, we'll keep this show specific to the USWA, and then with my other show, I can kind of just jump all over and do whatever I want whenever I want. And I like that. I like having that show to be able to just do whatever I want. I do interviews. If there's somebody to interview, I'll interview them. Spellbinder interview pops up, I'll interview him. Then next week I'm reviewing, KEW with somebody. Then I'm reviewing Global or Smoky Mountain or whatever, So, and you can check that stuff out, folks, over at youtube.com/retro wrestling archive. And I was excited because it looked like we were going to be wrapping up in like 1 hour and 45 minutes. And now it's 2 hours and 13 minutes. So with that being said, guys, thank you very much. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Richard, we'll see you next week. Hey, folks, before we get out of here, I'd just like to take a moment to tell you we appreciate you checking out the podcast. And if you would, do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you're listening to this right now, wherever you're watching it. If you'll just take a moment to either subscribe, to rate, and review, let us know what you think. We hope you're liking it. But even if you're not, let us know what you would like to see changed, and we will take that in consideration as we move forward. So we really appreciate any feedback we can get. Also, we just want to say how proud we are to be a part of the WrestleCopia brand of wrestling podcast. Ray Russell brings you something for everyone over at WrestleCopia.com. Check out all the great wrestling podcasts available over there right now. And for all things related to the Retro Wrestling Review podcast, you can go to USWAPodcast.com and you can find links to everything we have there, our Facebook, our Twitter /X, our TikTok, our Instagram, our merch store. That's right. We've got shirts, we've got hats, we've got phone cases, we've got all kinds of great stuff. And it's all right there at our store. And you can find a link to it at USWAPodcast.com. There's a link to the YouTube channel we're associated with, the Retro Wrestling Archive. You can find all that there. And if you have questions for us, if you saw something on the show that you have a question about or a comment about, if you've got some info to answer a question we have, or you had a question you want us to read on the air, if you want to work out an ad swap, if you want to have any kind of communication with us, you can go and send an email to uswapodcast@outlook.com, and I will get back to you just as quickly as humanly possible. And if you're a fan of Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert, and if you've heard it, I know you are, check out DougGilbertPodcast.com for all things related to Doug's podcast. You can find links to our Facebook page for the show, our Twitter. You can find links to Doug's social media, his Twitter, his Facebook. All that's available there, plus a link to the YouTube channel. And if you have a question for Doug you would like for me to ask him on the air, you can send that question to DougGilbertPodcast@outlook.com, and we will get it added and it will get answered in a future episode just as quickly as we can work it in. So we appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you here next week for more